Boundless Spirit, pushing the limits of talk radio with Charlene Springer.
Welcome to Boundless Spirit Radio with Charlene Springer. We have a wonderful guest for you today. We've got Sherry Jackson, and for those of you who have issues with the IRS, this is someone that you actually need to hear with any sort of taxes and financial issues with businesses, etc. She is a financial consultant and basically a tax consultant, and she has had the experience of a lifetime, and not necessarily in a good way in the beginning, but she is a former IRS agent, and we welcome Sherry Jackson. How are you? Sherry Perry Jackson.
Great. That's right. Sherry Peel Jackson. Thank you.
Yep.
Charlene, it is great to be here. Thank you for having me on your show.
Great. So now, I mean, people hear your name and they go, oh, yeah, there's that woman that went to federal prison and she was a former, IRS agent. So what do you say to them when they approach you like that?
That's it. What can you say? People are going to see things through whatever eyes they see them through. Most of the people that approach me say, I'm proud of you. I'm glad that you stood up for your rights, or some of them even say you stood up for our rights. The ones that don't know what it's about, they may even run. I've had one woman tell a man that was her friend, hey, this is Sherry Jackson. She's the one that was challenging the IRS, and, the IRS is the income taxes. It doesn't apply to us. And I had never seen this before, and I haven't seen it since. But he literally ran. He ran. So there's a lot of fear, but I'd rather people know up front who I am so they can decide whether they're going to be fearful or whether they're going to, take a stand. And those that are fearful, I would rather not deal with in the first place.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, I mentioned your name to a couple of people. I saw I have an interview today with you. And one guy, he was yelling, hero, hero, hero. Oh. So you have fans, don't even know who you are yet, but you have fans. So anyone that takes on the IRS is a fan. So now you became an IRS agent. How long ago was that?
I started there in 1988. I started out, graduated from college and worked for a couple of CPA firms. My problem with that was either you were at a small firm that worked you like a Hebrew slave, or you were at a large firm that put you in one department and you never learned, the full breadth of accounting. So I left there and went to corporate America, and I'm sure you guys know corporate America is so political. It's not about what you know. It's about who you know and even what you do with who you know. So that didn't last long. My father always taught me that if I don't like where I am at point A, go to point B. And I didn't stay there long because I knew that that's not the place that I wanted to be. So I started looking around for a job. I looked in the newspaper here in Atlanta and saw internal revenue agent, and I qualified. And I said, okay, well, this will be something that I can do on my own. I can audit individual tax returns. I don't have to worry about or wait on anybody else to give me any feedback or any paperwork before I move forward. And I got the job. I was hired on the spot and started in January of 1988.
Now, just in general, prelude, what were you thinking as a kid? Were you saying, okay, this is what I want to go to school for, I'm really good at math, or what was this?
That's interesting, because first of all, you have the thing about me that I'm a real introverted type person. My parents were very good parents, especially the way my father taught me to think. He always talked about mindset. So when I would get in trouble, he would say, what was your mindset when you did that? So he taught me to be a strategic thinker. He also made me learn how to play chess. Because chess is a game of life. If that person moves to that position, you have to figure out why did they move to that position and how did that affect me. So I was a strategic thinker from childhood. Also, he told me when I was 18 I was getting out. So that put the fear of God in me, because I'm going around la-di-da-di-da, as a teenager. And then he says, when you're 18, you're getting out. He said, if you go to college here in Atlanta, you can stay at home and go to school. We'll try to support you if you go to another school outside of Atlanta area, but when you're 18, you're getting out. Then he came to me with a Black Essence magazine one day when I was about 15, and it was the top 100 careers for Black people. And he said, here, you need to read this because you like nice things. And so I'm flipping through this, and I see Doctor, Lawyer, Indian Chief, and it's like, no, I don't like blood, and I don't like this and that. And my uncle was at that time was an engineering student at Tuskegee Institute, and I saw some of his books, and I'm like, no, I don't want that. So I saw accountant, and I was like, I can add, subtract, multiply, and divide. I was pretty good in math. I was a lazy math student, but I was a B math student. Mm-hmm. So when I went to college, I already knew that I wanted an accounting degree and followed through with that. So that's how that came about. When I got to the point where I was deciding upon that job, it's like, okay, this ought to be easy. The paperwork is done. I am just looking at it, auditing it to see if it's correct.
So that all that strategic thinking really came in handy, right? Thank you, Dad. You didn't know he was preparing you for all this.
I think he did know that.
He knew,
and he's still at it.
So, I mean, what does your family say, because they're like, wow, you went to federal prison. How is your family supporting you or not?
I'm one of those real hardline Christians. I have a large biological family that supported me. They said, well, do you understand the ramifications of what you're doing? That's what they said when I started to speak out. My mother was afraid, but she knew that both her and my dad taught me, to stand up for what I believed in. They couldn't go back on what they taught me. So I had full support. The church they supported me. They sent letters to the judge and all that. Everybody supported me. I had maybe one or two people. See, when things like this happen, Charlene, you find out who your friends are. So I had less than a handful of people that, deserted me. But everybody stood behind me during this because, you know what? Deep down inside, even if you have not done the research, people know that the income tax is wrong. Even if they don't believe in what we are talking about, that it's illegal. Even if they think it's legal, they know it's wrong. In my office, I'm looking up at one of my posters, and it's a poster of some slaves in a cotton field, and at the top it says slavery. There are about 9 slaves, and one of the lady slaves looks like she has a baby wrapped around her back. You know how they used to do in Africa, and it says, if stealing 100% of the product of someone's labor is slavery, at what percentage is it not slavery? So that's what kind of resonated with me. I work hard. I have a spirit of excellence in my work. I work hard. I've always been that way. And when I work, I want to reap the fruit of my own labor, not be forced to give it to someone else to do things with that I don't want done with it.
Free will.
Right. We were born with free will. And other people are trying to take it away. And that's why I call the IRS the insidious representatives of Satan, because they are trying to take away what is mine.
Could you say that again? I love that.
The insidious
IRS
representatives of Satan. Insidious representatives of Satan. That's exactly right. Think about it.
That's what it actually sounds like, because I mean, this is absolutely crazy. So now let's go backpedal a little bit. So you started working for the IRS. Then what happened that you would get to the point where they would come after you like that?
Okay, so I worked at the IRS from 1988 to 1995. I excelled in rank. I got promotions. I got plaques. I got cash rewards because I try to do the best that I can at whatever I do. And then it started nagging me as I started to move up in rank. I started out auditing small businesses, mom and pop businesses, some of them in their homes, some of them in small storefronts. And during those audits, these mom and pop they were just making it. They didn't have money for an attorney. They didn't have money for bookkeepers. And they would get slammed, Charlene, with $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in tax if they made a mistake. Wow. And I thought that was the way it was. But as I started to get up in the corporations and partnerships, these people would get a large audit adjustment also, just like mom and pop. But these people had attorneys and CPAs that could come in and make deals with the IRS attorneys. So their $250,000 assessment that I assessed them magically turned into $20,000 or $30,000.
Wow.
And I thought that was wrong on so many different levels. As a matter of fact, I approached my manager and said, well, what's going on here? Because protocol has been breached. Anytime somebody goes to do an appeal, the agent that did the case is supposed to do the rebuttal. But this thing had been closed without me seeing it prior to the any rebuttal. So it was closed, and it closed for over $100,000 less than what I assessed. So when I went to him and said, well, this is not what's supposed to happen. I'm supposed to rebut this, and this was a bad case because they were doing all kinds of stuff wrong. And he looked at me and he said, Sherry, leave it.
Wow.
So even the fact that they're stealing money from everybody, they still have another system of politics where the people that have money keep money because they pay these attorneys and CPAs, and mom and pop go out of business or, begin to struggle and get into debt because they don't have the same. And so that bothered me. But the biggest thing was, I told you I'm a hardline Christian. I was moving up in rank, but I was neglecting my family. I would come home tired. I would come home with headaches from arguing and fighting with CPAs and attorneys at corporations. And I would, put peanut butter and jelly on some bread and put it on the table with some milk. And children were little, and they were okay with that, but I wasn't. I knew it was wrong. So I said, my time should be going to my family. And I just quit. I mean, it was a decision that took me a while. It's not like I just quit in one day. I waited back and forth, and I was not looking for another job. I just quit. And the people were asking me, where are you going to go to work? Are you going to a CPA firm? Are you going to a corporation? No, I'm going home to be June Cleaver. Now, that's when people started to approach me to tell me that they had done research or they heard that the income tax was being misrepresented and or misapplied to those that live and work in the 50 states. I think some of them knew about it, but they were too afraid to say anything while I was still an IRS agent.
Right.
So when I quit in 95, I started hearing it around 98, 99. That's when I really started hearing it. And it was coming from people from all walks of life, from, somebody that's working as a mechanic to U.S. congressman in Texas. They're saying these things, and I'm thinking, wow, there are a lot of people saying this. But at that point, I spent a year doing the June Cleaver thing and decided that I didn't want to be broke. So because I was already a CPA, I opened up a CPA firm in my basement. Another one of those things my parents taught me: when I buy a house, get one with a basement, because on top of having an extra room or, just extra space, you can use that as a business. And if push comes to shove and hard times come, you can rent it out. So I turned the basement into a CPA firm. I got a paved walkway from the street to the basement door and opened up shop. Some of those people were telling me the same thing. I've been hearing the income tax is a fraud. And so at some point or another, somebody gave me a book by Irwin Schiff, How Anybody Can Stop Paying Income Taxes. It was a little yellow book. And along with that, a pastor came to me and said, one of my parishioners is up in arms because she's in this study group and they're studying about the income tax. I would like you to talk to her. So this lady called me, and she water hosed me down with all this information that she heard concerning the misapplication of the income tax. And I was able to take it. And when we got off the phone, I was thinking, wow, this is interesting stuff. But I was so busy making my six figures in my CPA firm, and I put that on the back burner. And then a group called We the People Foundation for Constitutional Education out of New York put a full-page ad in the USA Today. I believe it was their second ad, and it said, Dear We the People, the income tax is a fraud. And this ad went on to talk about how, it didn't apply to us, and they were taking our money out of our payroll, and they weren't supposed to do that because it was supposed to stop after the war. And then there was two little sections that really interested me. Number one, a former IRS criminal.
Okay, back up. Sherry, back up. You said this was supposed to happen just because of the war?
There was, after World War II.
Right.
Germany lost, and, things were divided up between the allied nations, and there was a meeting at a place called Bretton Woods, and a lot of things happened there. One of the things is the U.S. dollar became the reserve currency, but they had already started taking up money for the war, and they liked taking that money straight out of our paycheck, so they basically continued it, and the sunset rule was put aside. In other words, sunset, it was supposed to be over. So there is so much research out there, and there's so much information that shows that people that are supposed to pay the tax, non-resident aliens, foreign corporations, and other in countries for the privilege of doing business over here, and it makes total sense to me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
For example, China is supposed to be paying a whole bunch of excise tax because they ship all of that junk over here and sell it to us. But then during the Monica Lewinsky scandal and everybody was looking at the blue dress, they were giving China most favored nation status, so they don't have to pay the tax. So everything's on us. Let's jump forward again. Everything's on us. When on September 29th, 2008, the stock market went down 777.68 points in one day, and Americans lost $10.2 trillion in their savings, which was the largest transfer of wealth known to man. That money didn't disappear. It went from us, the middle class and the poor people, to the banksters that were too big to fail, and to the rich folks. So they did it to us again. And then they had the bailout. Well, we were the ones that needed to be bailed out. If they had taken all that money and given it to everybody in the United States of America that had a mortgage, I can't imagine what would have been going on right now with the thriving businesses, because people wouldn't have that gigantic mortgage to pay off. But anyway, that's another story. So, yeah, there were some things that happened in the past. There's a great book called The Creature from Jekyll Island that talks about how the income tax and the Federal Reserve were diabolically created by the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the Warburgs and some of those rich people down in Jekyll Island, Georgia in 1909. And then the income tax was created in 1913. And all of this to make sure that they keep power over you by keeping your money. So that's what happened. And I started doing all this research. And people ask me, yeah, you did a lot of research, but what is it that actually made you come out and speak as opposed to keeping all this to yourself? What is it that what is the straw that broke the camel's back? And I tell people it was really when I found out that the Federal Reserve was not federal, and that the Federal Reserve is a non-auditable non-auditable private banking cartel. They're non-auditable.
Did you say non-auditable? Auditable?
Ron Paul forever had been trying to audit the Fed. Nobody has been able to audit the Federal Reserve. The members of the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve chairman is not elected like an official. He's appointed by the president, which is given suggestions by the Federal Reserve owners. So this Federal Reserve is the club, and the IRS basically are the bouncers for the club. They break your legs when you don't pay. So the Federal Reserve is collecting over $40 million an hour in interest from the American people. Whoa. I know that number sounds very large, but if you go Google debt clock will show you all the debt that we're in. Who do we owe that? Non-auditable private banking cartel called the Federal Reserve. Now, in 1984, Ronald Reagan commissioned Peter Grace and the Grace Commission. This was a group of private businessmen, and he wanted to know what was going on with the money that was coming in to the coffers of the United States of America. This 2,800-page report came back and said none of the money collected in income tax goes towards running the country.
What?
Well, none of the money, it says not one nickel or even not one dime of the money collected in income tax goes towards running the country. It goes towards a whole bunch of, corporate stuff and just a whole bunch of stuff. You can look up Grace Report. It does not go towards running the country. So when I found out that the Federal Reserve wasn't federal and the money that was collected wasn't going towards running the country. So, okay, I'm sitting at my desk. I'm at this point working 12 to 16 hours a day, trying to whip out audit reports so that I can get paid. I'm staying up all night until 7 o'clock in the morning because I had my husband at the time was a fireman, and he would get off at 7. So I would stay up all night, and I would put a note on the bedroom door. I just went to bed at 7. That let him know that when he walked in the door, he had to take the children to school because I was going to get some sleep. So I'm doing this, and I'm thinking, okay, so when I write a $10,000 or $12,000 check to the Internal Revenue Service, it's not going towards fixing the roads because the gas tax pays for that, and it's not going towards the policemen and the firemen that protect my neighborhood, nor the teachers, because our real estate taxes and ad valorem taxes pay for that. Where is the money going? It's going to some Rockefeller or Morgan or Warburg child. Their children's children's children will never have to work a day in their life because they set this system up where they would always have this money going to this private banking cartel. And while I can't even get a decent vacation for my family while I'm working 12 to 16 hours a week. Okay, so that black woman's head snapped to the side and said, this is not going to happen. Because, I wanted nice things, too. I wanted to be able to fly around the country. I wanted to be able to backpack across Italy. But I didn't want to break my back doing it while some child that is not even born, some child that will be born in the year 2032, Charlene, will have the money that these people are making right now. And that just bothered me to no end, so I started to speak out.
And speaking out, you mean, like, what were you doing? Were you doing seminars? Were you writing letters? What were you doing? How did you speak out?
The first thing I did was I gathered some people together to look at this thing to see if I was seeing it cross-eyed or anything. Like, I didn't just assume just because I read some things and because other people said some things that I was right, because for all these years they've been taking money from us. And, deep down inside I knew that I was right, but it's like, maybe I missed something. Maybe there's some clause or somewhere that says they can take our money. So I started meeting with a few people, and then getting back to that USA Today, I ordered Joe Bannister's books because it talked about this former IRS agent, criminal investigation division agent that wrote a book, and he was forced to resign because they didn't answer his carefully thought out questions concerning the legality of the income tax. So I got his books, and one night about 11 p.m. Eastern, my phone rang, and it was Joe Bannister, and he said, "I'm Joe Bannister, and I got your check in the mail." And I was about to fall over on the floor because within the envelope that I sent a check, I also sent a flyer to a meeting that I was having to talk about this issue. So not only did he see that I was a former IRS agent and a CPA, but that I was bringing up these issues. So we talked on the phone for about an hour. I ended up flying out to L.A. and meeting with some others, and there was an initiative to start educating the people. Some wealthy people put money together and wanted to run a series of 12 ads in the USA Today. These ads, if you run them on a Friday, then you get Friday, Saturday, and Sunday because the USA Today is a weekday paper.
Right.
And back then it was $64,000 every week. So they got the contract, and after the fourth ad, the USA Today called We the People and said, "We're canceling this contract."
Whoa.
Because you're telling people to do something that's illegal. We the People said, "We're not telling people to do anything. We are just sharing information that we've learned." So that went back and forth, and of course they didn't want to have to go to a law situation to file lawsuit against USA Today for breach of contract because that would have been more money out of our pockets that we could do other things with.
Right.
But within that, there was one of those 4 ads that did get by. Myself, Joe Bannister, and John Turner, which was another former agent. He was in what was then called the collection division. I was in what was then called the examination division, and Joe Bannister had been in the criminal investigation division. So that was all 3 divisions of the IRS. So they had our pictures plastered in the USA Today, and they said, what do these 3 people have in common? They're all former IRS agents who believe that the income tax is being misrepresented. They put all the law in there. So Then 60 Minutes called, and they had us on 60 Minutes. I knew that I don't care how nice the reporter was, the person at the top, the media is owned by the same owners of the Federal Reserve, so I knew that they weren't going to put me in a good light. So I talked to them on the phone, but I wouldn't get on camera. And sure enough, Joe got on camera, and they made him look really, really bad. And what they did with me is they took a clip from a meeting that I was at and stuck it up there, but basically making.
So they've been following you for a while then, if they would do that.
Yes, they have. This was 2001-ish. So I think they started really looking at us around 2002. In 2004, in summer, they raided my home. They came in, had us at gunpoint, and raided my home.
And what did they think they were going to find?
For?
Yeah.
There was a search warrant, and the search warrant said that they would be able to prove to the judge that I committed 5 felonies, which had to do with mailing information to people that wasn't true and obstructing the laws and the tax laws of the government and blah, blah, blah. So they were in my house from 7:45 in the morning till 5 o'clock, quitting time, and they left with 32 or so boxes, and this was July of 2004. And so I had an attorney friend that was, one of the people that was heavily into this also said, well, they want you to shut up. If you shut up now, then they probably won't do anything else with you. But, I believe that people need to know the truth, because if you are living in a lie, your reality is a fallacy. So even if you don't do anything about the information that you learn the information and decide what you're going to do about it for yourself and your family. So I continued to speak. Then Aaron Russo, the guy that made Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and The Rose with Bette Midler, came to us and said he wanted to do a documentary on the IRS, and he did. It's called America, From Freedom to Fascism, and it is still on YouTube. So he had me, Joe and John, 2 other former IRS employees, a former FBI agent, Ron Paul of Texas, and a whole bunch of constitutional attorneys and U.S. historian in this documentary. Basically, his quest was to find out the law that requires anybody to file and pay. Of course, at the end of the movie, there was no answer. He got a chance to interview one of the former IRS commissioners, which walked out of the interview. And there were a whole bunch of other IRS employees on there fumbling over the question. It was our patriotic duty. It's not my patriotic anything. This is taxation without representation. I don't know about you, Charlene, but I'm surely not being represented around here. Anyway, so the movie came out, and that was 2006. And after that, a little bit before that, I believe, Charles Grassley, which was the Senate Finance Committee chairman, they had Senate Finance Committee hearings on us. They had our pictures blown up.
You're
on
kidding.
Eagles. And they would, yes. And so I was going to Washington. I said, okay, finally get a chance in front of Congress and the Senate to show them what I've learned. They would not let us speak. And a reporter said, hey, you're having this Senate Finance Committee hearing about these people. You have their pictures up there, but why aren't you letting them speak? And then one of them said they would detract from the message that we are trying to put across. So Joe and some of the others went. That's what they said. I didn't go because I said I'm not trekking all the way to Washington if these jokers aren't going to let me speak, and they didn't. And their goal at that point was to start shutting us down. They wanted to shut our websites down. They were talking about all this, and then one of the guys got up and said, "You can't shut these people's websites down because they have free speech rights, and they're not telling anybody to do anything." That was
they're just giving information. Yeah,
we're giving information. So then they started prosecuting us, and we basically know what happened after that. Joe Bannister was prosecuted first. He was the darling of the tax movement because he had been a criminal investigation division agent, the ones that carried the gun. Well, Joe happened to have 2 great attorneys and a thinking jury that acquitted him. But do you know that the IRS was so angry that Joe was acquitted that they went to the California Board of Accountancy and told the California Board of Accountancy to take Joe's license, and they did.
Wow.
So by the time they got to Joe was acquitted, and then they had Tommy Cryer, and I don't know whether you heard of him. He was an attorney in Louisiana that had not filed tax returns in at least 10 years, was taken to court, and Tommy came up with the famous memorandum. I think they call it the memorandum. It's 109 pages of carefully researched law that shows that the income tax doesn't apply to us, and taxable income. The definition of income, by the way, Charlene, is not in the Internal Revenue Code, but his memo shows that income is corporate profit. So when the corner store makes $100,000 a month, and they have expenses, they have salaries and electricity and all that, and their expenses in that month are $50,000. Their profit is $50,000, and that's what they pay tax on. That's profit. That's income. But with us, if I contract with you to mow your lawn, and you say you're going to give me $100 to mow your lawn, I'm going to use my arms, legs, and brain, and I'm going to mow your lawn the best that I can, and you're going to give me $100. That's called an even exchange, because something was used in order to get to the result. In order to get the $100, I used my time, talent, and my mind, my body, physically. But that's not worth anything to our government. So we don't get to deduct 50% or $50,000 or any of that. As a person that has a job, they take their money. They take your money off the top. So they take their piece of the pie right out of your check before you see it, and that is wrong on so many different levels.
Whoa. So now, what was it like to be convicted? Because first of all, they invade your house, and you said this was early morning that they came in. And they took all these things. Your kids, how are your kids? How did your kids deal with that trauma?
My children are very resilient. They were 14 and 12 at the time. They sat there for a while and watched all this while they had us corralled in one room, because my children were sleeping at the time. My husband was. I was in the basement typing up a memo for another one of the Patriots, and so they corralled us all in one room. They let me go put on some clothes because I had on a T-shirt. That's all I had on. And eventually, I think my son said, well, can we go over to Auntie Sharon's house? Well, their godmother lived around the corner in the same neighborhood. So I called her, and she came immediately to pick them up. And I felt a lot better. Even though they had put the guns away, I felt a lot better. I had gotten in touch with a fellow named Larkin Rose, which is another one of the very, very profoundly knowledgeable freedom fighters. And he said, whatever you do, don't leave your house, because if you leave the house, they won't let you back in. And they did offer for me to leave, but I didn't, because they wouldn't let me back in. And God knows what could have been planted in my house. So they ended up with all those boxes, and they could not come up with a felony, Charlene. All they came up with was the fact that I practiced what I preached, that I did not give them the money that was mine. So the charge against me was not a felony charge. It was a misdemeanor charge. So they could not indict me, because an indictment has to do with a felony. What they did was called an information. And when they're taking somebody to court that is a misdemeanor, it's called an information. So this information said that I did not file tax returns. And the specific years that they chose were specific years where I made a lot of money. There's a thing called jury appeal. And the IRS, because I went through training myself, they won't just prosecute anybody. If you don't have jury appeal, they're not going to prosecute you. They will not prosecute certain types of people. If you didn't make a whole bunch of money, they're not going to prosecute you, because 9 times out of the 10, the jury is going to relate to you. If you make $50,000 and they're a $50,000 owner, they're going to relate to you. Or if you're a fireman or a policeman or a nurse, they're going to relate to you. You're a helper. But if you're a 6-figure earner, and this is what the man did over and over and over. In 2000, she made $150,000. In 2001, she made $177,000. And he did that over and over and over, basically to make the jury hate me. And I had a lot of supporters that came to the trial from all over the country, bless their hearts. Joe Bannister came to my trial because I had come to his trial also. I had people from California all the way from Florida, everywhere. And one of them was secretly following the jury around as they were escorted out and back in. And he told us that right before the jury went in to deliberate, the bailiff that led them into the deliberation room, before he closed the door, he said to them, if I got to pay, she got to pay.
What?
Let's back this up. Cases like this, unless you have some serious thinkers on the jury, cases like this are doomed before they started. One of the things that I wanted to ask the jury, and the attorneys couldn't, the judge would not let the attorney ask this question. And it was only one question. To a room full of potential jurors, would you be afraid to acquit Miss Jackson for fear of IRS retribution against yourself? Now, I believe that every hand in there would have been raised. So you got a room full of people that are scared of the IRS. Do you think they're going to go with a woman? And especially since the prosecution kept bringing up how much money I made, and then a couple of people told some lies on me. It was just crazy. Anyway, so yeah, I was convicted. I was like, well, I was in shock. I really thought that I could at least get one standout that would say, no, I really think we need to look into this, because it had happened before. So here I am, the judge, and this was incredible also. When the decision was made, then they said guilty, and they said there was 4 counts. They were all the same 4 misdemeanor counts, but they said fail, 2000 guilty, 2001 guilty, 2002 guilty, 2003 guilty. The judge got up and walked out of the room.
What?
Yeah. She didn't say a word. Now, I failed to mention that they sent people down from Washington, D.C. to prosecute me.
You're the big bad wolf, aren't you?
They had lost Joe's case. They had lost Tommy Cryer's case. They could not afford to lose another tax case, so they were afraid that everybody that was aware of what was going on in the United States would stop filing income tax returns. So they had to do this. And I do believe in my heart that she knew, there was some stuff going on behind the scenes that, I can't prove, so I won't say, but there was some things going on. I got thrown under the bus. Anyway, so yeah, I fired the attorney and I represented myself at the sentencing, and I had great help from some paralegal people, because what they were trying to do to me is give me a 4-year. Each count was 1 year because it was a misdemeanor. Right. Instead of doing it consecutive and making me go to prison 1 year, they did it. Instead of doing it concurrent and making me go 1 year, they did it consecutive. Wow. And also, they were trying to give me 4 years of probation. So I had a brilliant guy named Lindsey Springer, bless his heart. He's in prison right now for some other thing, and maybe because he helped me was part of it too. But he wrote a briefing basically saying if you give her a misdemeanor and you send her for 4 years, and you're doing this consecutive, and then you try to turn around and give her another 4 years of probation, you're making this a capital crime. And they don't even do this with people who have felonies. So they ended up giving me a 4-year sentence on a misdemeanor, and I had 1 year of what they call, they don't call it probation, but 1 year probation. Now, because I didn't get in any trouble in prison, the sentence ended up being 3 years because they had to give me 6 months good time and 6 months halfway house. Right, so I got good time and I got out and went to halfway house for 6 months, which hindsight is an exact science. And if I had known then what I know now, I may have stayed at the prison camp because it was crazy at that place. But I did go down there. I did make that out of another classroom. It's like God is in control. Everything filters through him. If he wanted me there's something for me to learn, and there was a lot for me to learn. I learned that the most of the people in the United States have no clue what's going on. They have no clue. They know who won the last American Idol or Dancing with the Stars, or they know, the people on Empire or whatever these shows are. They know all that stuff, but they have no clue of what's really going on in the world. And I had been living in a bubble for all these years. I was in 2 bubbles. I was in a Christian bubble, and I was in a bubble with people that are, self-aware and aware of what's going on. And these people had no clue. And some of them were even offended that I would say that the income tax needed to go away because they were getting a lot of benefits, like welfare and stuff like that. So it's like I learned a lot, and I didn't waste that time at all. I said,
does income tax go for welfare though?
No, but people think it does. People have been brainwashed into thinking that the money collected in income tax goes towards running this country, but it does not. It does not. We don't even have any money in these social programs. The Social Security and all that stuff is broke. There's no money in there. This thing is a house of cards made of paper, and it's about to blow over. And the wind blew in 2008, and I think the storm is coming because they've been kicking the can down the road for decades now, and I can see the dead end. So prison was very interesting. I came home and said I was going to come out swinging. I went and got a master's degree and, just improved my skills, got back to the point where I was making six figures again because I was not going to let these people break me. The two really sad things that happened based on this whole situation. Number one, I lost a tooth because they wouldn't treat it. I mean, if you want to look at what socialistic health care is about, look in the prison system. Wow. I can't even describe to you. I have three books on Kindle. One is called Questions People Ask About Prison Life. One is called my flagship book is Wrongly Convicted, and the other one is Prayers of Deliverance for Prisoners, Conquering the Enemy and the Enemy through the Word of God, because I had to do a lot of praying in there. But it's so ignorant in there. But I had to come out of there. I had to come out and set some standards. So I lost a tooth, and then my marriage failed because while I was gone, the women acted like I was dead, and they just. I had a nice looking husband. And during the time that I was making great money, I bought him a Mercedes Benz, and he's riding around.
They were driving all up in your Mercedes Benz, huh?
I mean, they were all over the place, and unfortunately, some of them I knew. So that, being the person that I am, it's like forgiveness is one of the hallmarks of Christianity. But he kept doing it, so it's like you had your chance. So I lost a marriage, and I lost a tooth. But you can't break a person that knows who they are and knows what their purpose is. And my purpose is to educate people concerning where they are, specifically about their finances. Those that want to know. Now, I'm old enough and wise enough to know that everybody doesn't want to be helped. You cannot help people that don't want to be helped. But for those who want to be helped, then they're on the train with me because I consider myself a bullet train. I burn the candle at two ends. I'm up, not really, really early in the morning, but I'm up late at night. I'm trying to help people and those that want help. And I've had some success stories. But for those who want to come home and sit and watch the television, oh, by the way, my name for the television is the electronic income reducer and the electronic intellect reducer. So for people who want to come home and do that every day, then I can't help you. Now, I believe in, people having rest and relaxation. I really do. I believe that, you work hard, especially, if you have a job, you're working for some crappy boss and, he's breathing down your neck or she's breathing down your neck. You want to come home. You want to relax. But it's not about coming home and spending the rest of the evening looking at that thing and then falling asleep in front of the 11 o'clock news. It's about coming home, taking a little while to decompress, eat your dinner, spend a little bit of time with your kids, and then get your second win and start working on what's going to improve your life, specifically home-based businesses. That's where I am. I'm teaching people how to start thriving home-based businesses.
I mean, it would make such a difference, wouldn't it? But people get caught up, and then, even with the news thing, people are still, upset about Trump. I'm like, why? This you have to figure out what you're going to do for you. It's not about Trump anymore,
And it really never was. I stopped paying attention to politics when I realized that the Democrats and Republicans were sleeping in the same bed and screwing us all. I just threw it all in and started focusing on my team. My team is not the Atlanta Falcons, nor is it the Seattle Seahawks. My team is called the Jackson team. And so I've been focusing on the Jackson team, and no matter what Trump does up in there and what he tweets, and even if it had been Hillary, it doesn't matter. It matters what you're going to do when the excrement hits the portable cooling device, which it will. Where are you going to be? I was a master as a child at musical chairs, because when the music was on and everybody else was talking and haphazardly going around the chairs, I was strategically in front of the chair every time. So when the music went off, my butt was in a chair and not on the floor. So what I'm saying to you and your listeners is, the music is about to stop. It's about to stop. Where is your butt going to be? Is it going to be in a chair, or is it going to be on the ground?
Wow. That's really something to consider or to know.
Definitely. I mean, are your listeners planning? I am not a doomsday person. I am a realist, and the stuff that's going on in this country right now is super crazy. So are you prepared? Will you be prepared if trucks can't get to a store and you don't have any food? Will you be prepared if some crazy stuff goes on? Oprah is not going to be there for you. Oprah has her island and her private jet. She will be on her island, and she is not taking the studio audience with her. Okay? A lot of these movie stars are buying property all over the world. What were you going to say about Oprah?
It's fully sustainable. I mean, she shows you her crop. Yep.
And I can show you mine. And I can show you what I have to protect it, just in case somebody thinks they're going to come up in here and take what I work for.
And I guess this is really all it is. It's what you work for, you expect to enjoy it. You don't really want to have it taken from you by law or whatever. And it's not even a law. Because you talk about this about the Constitution. You talk about how none of this is actually in the Constitution. And most people come to you and they say, well, it's a part of the Constitution.
Well, it's not. It's imposts, excises, duties, and tariffs. Those are if we got back to constitutional taxes, we'd be in good shape. But they don't want to do that, because between the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence is saying that we have unalienable rights, not inalienable. That's not a word. Unalienable means you can't put a lien on my rights. I have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that's not happening if I'm pursuing a certain standard of living and you're constantly taking it. So all of this stuff is a fallacy that they learn in school. That's why my children, they never graced the halls of a government school. I knew by the time I was 14 years old that they weren't, because my mother was a county social worker in the school system, and she would come home with all these fantastical stories about what would happen. And in my 14, 15 mind, I already knew that I wasn't going to put my children that. They were in private school, and then after the raid, the IRS went to the private school and started asking questions and scared them. And after being at that school, that particular school, they had been at for 5 years. My children were very active. My then husband had gotten the country club and the golf club in our golf club community to let the school's golf team use the golf course on Mondays because it was closed. All this. Then we get this letter the day after school is out saying that we're not invited back. So that's because the IRS criminal investigation agents went up to the school. So we started to homeschool, which was the best thing anyway.
Because what do you think they were saying? I mean, what did Bannister ever tell you, like, what they could have been saying? Like, are they telling these people that, you're a criminal and you don't want to have criminals in here? No, they can't tell them any of that. They just asked a lot of questions about how much I paid, how I paid, and all that. But we found out later that the school was doing some funky stuff because they got closed down. So they got afraid because attention had been brought on them because they were doing some funny stuff with the money. But that was a good thing anyway, because we went to a great homeschool network, and the children got a chance to learn and not just get indoctrinated. Because my children, they had debate teams, and they learned Spanish and they learned Latin. So, it's a matter of, I know a lot of people cannot
put their children in homeschool, or they can't send them to private school, but be active in the school that you have to send your children to. My mother still works with the school system a little bit, although she's retired, and she says that the parents don't even come to PTA. They bring their children to school with pajamas on and say, give my child some breakfast. He hadn't had breakfast, and my mom has to say, ma'am, it's 9 o'clock. Breakfast was over at 8. So we have some mindset changes to do, especially in the African-American community, because it's gotten just totally outrageous.
Wow. So, I mean, how do you, are you doing any, like, seminars and stuff to help educate people, or are people wanting to be educated on this?
Those that want to be educated are finding me. Most of my clients are not in Georgia. I have them in certain places, most East Coast, West Coast. I have even out of the country. The thing is, people have to change their mindset. If they don't value what I have, if they don't see that this is more important than watching Empire, then they're not going to come to a seminar. So I have stopped doing seminars, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to be totally frank with you on this. I had the money to go and do these seminars. I would go and book a flight. Somebody will say, oh, come to, let's say, Dallas. Come to Dallas, and I have a lot of people that want to see you in Dallas, and we really love your information, and we want to hear and we want to learn. I said, okay, get your people together. I come to Dallas. I book the airfare. I book a hotel speaking room, a meeting room. I would book the hotel sleeping room, and we're running at $1,000 to $1,200, and then I have 5 people in the room.
Wow.
And these 5 people were the ones that wanted to learn. The rest of them were not interested because, let's say for the sake of argument, 120 people were contacted. And some of them have the gall to call back on a Monday and say, hey, how did it go? Oh, and by the way, I have a question. I took out my IRA. And, it's like, wait a minute now. You have the nerve to not show up and pay the $97 for a piddly $97 for a seminar that includes both my books and a ticket to the event and a whole bunch of other downloads and goodies, but you still have one quick question. You would not realize how many people try to call me with one quick question. If I actually sat there and tried to answer these people's questions, Charlene, I would be sick, physically sick, and I would be broke. So I'm wondering, is it because of my color? What is it? Because they wouldn't do a lawyer like that. They wouldn't call a lawyer and say, hey, I got one quick question. I got in a car accident the other day, blah, blah, blah. They wouldn't do that to a lawyer. But I guess they expect me to get on the phone with them and spend, 10, 20 minutes with each person that wants to call me. So I'm not disappointed. I'm just telling you how it is. That those who understand the value of what I have are contacting me, and I am helping them. And I would love to come to different cities. I had one woman in L.A. say, I want this information, and I have 20 friends that want this information. So I told her, have your 20 friends put the money in my account, and she did. And I went out there, and it was a wonderful seminar because I had a room full of people that wanted to learn. So from now on, I do it that way. If you want me to come, that's fine, but you got to get 20 or 30 people in a room paid up front because I was going on people's promises. I'm the one that keeps my word. And if someone said, if I say to you, I'm going to come to your seminar and I'm going to bring 20 people, I'm going to do that. But the people were saying that, and then they would bring them. Some of them didn't even come. Some of them beckoned me to come, and they didn't show up. So so I help people that want to be helped, and I have testimonials that are great. I just had one guy that had some taxes that he had to do. I helped him gather his information for them. He turned them in late, and because he was in transition, moving from one state to another, and the IRS charged him $5,000 for each return because they were corporate returns. So he said, Sherry, they just charged me $10,000 because my returns were late. So I told him exactly what to do because he was a paying client. I explained it to him. I told him what to do. He did it. He actually emailed me. He emailed me back and said they took the $5,000 penalties off. Good.
Well, the thing is how, you see like on television, tax consultants, everything, and, if the IRS says you owe this, then call us because we can help you. So are you like that, or is that a whole other story?
Absolutely, everybody that has done that has ended up, put it like this, several people have ended up coming to me because they listen to those ads, and they have these ads where they have a former IRS employee or they have an attorney or something doing the ad, and, come to our offices, and then you meet with that person and you tell them your story, and they say, we can help you. And as soon as you give your money, they stick you over in a corner with some kid that just graduated with an accounting degree, has no idea what they're doing. You say, hey, what? They do the bait and switch. So you thought you were working with this big-time former IRS employee, and they got you over here with this kid, and they're saying they need more money. And a lot of these people's cases have been botched. One of the women at my church came to me, and she said, Sherry, I paid these people $1,600 because I had a tax issue, and they said they could negotiate it for me so I can afford the payments. And they came back and said, well, the best we could do was $250.
Whoa.
And she said, I cannot afford $250. So I said, Claudette, this is what you need to do. And I told Claudette exactly what to do. Claudette went in herself to the IRS. I told her when to go and when not to go. I told her what to do, what to say. She came back to me and said, I was able to negotiate on my own $50 a month. And I wish I had not given those people $1,600. So
Wow.
She is just one of many people that have come to me after paying these organizations that you see on television.
Mm-hmm. Because I guess that's where they'd want to classify you, one of those people.
Yeah, I haven't. It's hard to deal with the IRS, and I don't like dealing with them. As a matter of fact, I don't deal with them on a one-on-one basis because they don't like me, and I don't want them taking that out on my clients.
Mm-hmm,
but I am the person in the background helping my client keep what they earned.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So why do you think? Well, I guess we can talk about that in the Woo Hour because we will have you on for the Woo Hour. Because it just, I'm like, why? Is it just really greed, or what is this really? But yeah, it's just a little warped right now. Out of prison. So what was it like when you came out?
I was happy to be home. I was a little hesitant to see. I wanted to see who was going to be with me and who was going to desert me, because there was a couple of people that kind of just disappeared when I went to prison. The people at my church, they wrote, they inquired. I had access to email a little bit, and I could only have 20 people on the email, but I would hear from my family. I had people come down to visit me. My mother was great at coordinating visits because we were so far away. I was in Florida, so it was at least an 8-hour drive. So my mother would make sure that my family members didn't all come at the same time. So she would come one weekend, and then, a couple of more weekends later, my dad would come, and a couple of weeks later, somebody else would come, so I would get regular visits. Now, there was one girl I remember that once a year, she had a family of about 20 people that came. And she had to get permission to get that many people at one time, but her family couldn't afford to just make regular visits down there, so they all came at one time. But my mother coordinated that, and when I came home, it took me about 3 days to get used to driving again. That was interesting because I'm one of those drivers that you probably don't like to see on the road. I have a lead foot, and I don't like people braking in front of me. So I turned into one of the timid people for about 3 days, and then I got back to myself. I immediately, I basically was, because I had a strong support system, I really got right back into the groove. Unfortunately, the situation at the halfway house was very,
that's a whole other story.
Yeah, it was a whole other story. There were like 120 horny men and 20 horny women.
What?
In this play, and then little me trying to avoid all of that. Yeah, It was ridiculous. So, but once I got past that, and then my mother again coordinated visits because you could have visitation on the weekend, and so lots of people, were able to come and visit with me, and then eventually, really quickly, within a month and a half or so, I was able to go on home confinement. So I was able to go home.
Wow. So, Sherry, we've come to the end of our hour. So, I mean, it just went by too quickly. I'm not done yet. But we do have the woo hour, and that's coming up next. The question for you is, again, how can people get in touch with you, your website, and where can we find your books?
The books are on my website, which is spjacksonconsulting.com. That's S as in Sherry, P as in Peter, Jackson. Consulting.com. That's just my general professional business site. I also have a blog site, and I haven't been blogging lately. SherryPeelJackson.org. They can sign up to get information. So if they go to SherryPeelJackson.org, they will be able to put in their information and get emails when something's coming up. If I do decide to do a seminar somewhere, they'll know that. But my main website, where the books are, is spjacksonconsulting.com. And they can see me all over YouTube and different places. But, I'm still big mouth.
It's not, you were put on this planet to speak out. And, you had all the training. You got all the reinforcements. You're good.
Yeah, I believe that's true. I mean, we're put here for a purpose. I believe that purpose is being fulfilled. You cannot let fear stop you from your assignment.
Yeah, I know.
People ask me, aren't you afraid? You had the balls to write a book called How to Stick It to the IRS when you got out of prison? They stuck it to me. I'm sticking it to them.
Incredible. So again, could you give me the websites one more time? Sorry. The one with .org, it's
Sherry Peel Jackson. And my maiden name is Peel, so that's P as in Peter, E-E-L. I got called potato peel, banana peel, all that. So Sherry Peel Jackson at SherryPeelJackson.org, O-R-G,
right.
not .com. I'm still trying to win that back. That got lost, and I'm trying to win that back. But SherryPeelJackson.org.
Right.
My email is SherryPeelJackson@gmail.com. And then my main business website is spjacksonconsulting.com.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much, Sherry, for being on with us this first hour. And I can't wait to hear what you've got to say in the woo hour. Thank you again for listening to, I don't know where we are anymore, Boundless Spirit Radio with Charlene Springer, and I'll see you next time. And, take the time and check out our woo hour. Take care.
Boundless Spirit goes off the rails. Next up in our members-only segment, the Woo Woo Hour. Whether it's happening on the planet, off the planet, or inside the planet, host Charlene Springer, expert guests, and you dare to go there in the Woo Woo Hour.